Are you feeling stifled, worn out, or just bored with your 9 to 5 or 9 to 9 job? I want you to know that you're not alone. I was there too till I started asking and wondering if there was another way to live and work where I could actually be more of me. In this episode, I bring to you real conversations with real people who have chosen to step out of their 9 to 5 employment and create a life for themselves that is more in line with their inner rhythm. Good afternoon, Shreya. Thank you so much
Hi.
for coming aboard and offering to share your story here. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And as you know, this series is called Beyond 9 to 5. And there's a lot that we can go into just journeying through your experiences. And I know you, but our audience doesn't. So I'm going to ask you to sort of go chronologically at the start, at least, and tell us about a time when you were working and what were your thoughts, your experience, and what started triggering you into believing that you could do something more.
Thank you, Ramya, for having me here. I am really looking forward to the conversation too. Okay, so jumping straight into it, I was working. After post graduation, I worked for 8 years. In fact, with Unilever, I was doing sales first, and then I was in marketing. And at the time that I left Unilever, which was around 5 years ago or so, I was a senior brand manager for skincare, and personal care. And it was great. I was really enjoying the job. I loved the aspects that my job entailed, which is a lot of consumer understanding. Some parts, or in fact, a pretty large part of my work entailed me to understand different kinds of consumers across the world, because that was one of the things we were trying to do. We were trying to launch our brand into different markets, to understand their lives, and how different cultures are, in fact. And it was all very interesting. And then to create mixes for them, to work with a lot of international cross-cultural teams as well. And then create communication, and it was all very interesting, rewarding. But I think what started to happen, actually, to be honest, I think B school led to this, entrepreneurship germ getting, sort of embedded in me. And I think the timing of the larger, the Indian ecosystem at that time was such that it was also it's been moving steadily towards entrepreneurship, or the conversation or narrative around entrepreneurship has been changing over the last 20 years. When I was growing up, regular people who had salaried jobs, perhaps could not think of entrepreneurship. It was something that needed capital, which was not readily accessible. It needed a different mindset, in fact. But I think with B school came a realization to me, by seeing other examples, and also because I think things changed in the world. In India, capital became more accessible, opportunities became more interesting, and lucrative. And there came that realization that something different could be done. So there was this thought, I think, post B school, and we sort of experimented with a few thought experiments, just myself and some friends and my husband, on how we could do something different. But it kept getting pushed to the back burner because I was having so much fun at work, and there was so much to do, there was so much to achieve and prove and all of that. But I think, yeah, so things came to a head around that time. It was in 2016, and some two kind of things started happening. Two parallel events or event work streams kind of converged, and one was that I got very somehow involved, in the whole, literature festival circuit. Involved in the sense as a spectator, as a consumer. And there was that year in 2015 when I went across to multiples of them, and I was so inspired by the stories of the people who came to speak at these events. They were leaders.
These are like the Jaipur Lit Festival.
Like the Jaipur Lit Fest, yes, Times Lit Fest. I went for one that my B school also did that year. So I think it was also a lot of traveling, a lot of meeting people, just being away from the whole 9 to 5, which is not 9 to 5, it's 9 to 9 really. And being away from that for some time, on these
How did you create the space to do that?
I think so. This is not a great thing, but I ended up not taking any leaves. I used to end up not taking or many leaves during the year, and a lot of leaves would accumulate at the end of the year.
So you had it all stopped.
Yeah, and I would take some offs, and the end of the year was always a somewhat easier time. So yeah, I did that, and it was just a sort of mental break from how I've been so involved with work. And I got to see, what else is out there. There are people who are solving sanitation problems in, Andhra Pradesh. There are people who are, working on ventures of their own. There's so many different ways to live your life. Somehow that realization came at me very strongly during those travels that year. And I think also the entire fascination with the startup ecosystem had also come to a head at that time. There was a lot of talk around it, around people, wanting to do something, and just leaving their jobs and starting it, doing things out of the passion for it, or out of an idea. In fact, there was a lot of that. So I want to give that, give credit to that ecosystem as well, because there are people who have been ahead of the curve. There are people who became entrepreneurs in 1990s, in the 1990s.
Paved the way for others.
Paved the way for others, exactly. So I want to give that credit to them, that they paved the way for us to think that it was possible to do. It was exciting to do. It seemed to me at that time that this is a set of skills. This is something so exciting that will hone me in ways that are unimaginable, that I can't imagine being in a large company and having the cushion of that. There's so much comfort there. And basically in, a lot of large companies, you end up specializing a lot, because there are, everything is so well thought out, and, there are so many, sort of, sub verticals, and everything needs to be done exactly the way that the frameworks dictate in these companies, that people end up really specializing. And so I thought that I wouldn't ever get to learn some of these skills.
Wow.
I wouldn't ever get to learn how it would be to fend on my own. And of course, I think some of it comes from privilege of people who perhaps have had very rough times, maybe growing up, and have had it very difficult for them to get the same things as maybe somewhat was easier for me, given my say my parents supporting me and having the ability to go to school and the colleges that I did, financially. I maybe.
So Shreya, I'm going to stop you there, because I see two beautiful points come up, which I just want to sort of, consolidate here. One is, you expressed a drive to grow, to challenge yourself, to expand the ways in which you were growing. If for, I'm just going to call it personal development, literally. Yeah. And what you realized was, in your role, it was more, it was like a development, but in one domain, right? Like a specialization, just one aspect of you. And you really you used the word excited, and you were excited about entrepreneurship, but you also looked at it as a vehicle or opportunity to sharpen, grow, explore other facets of yourself. So that underlying need for looking at this as personal development. And the other thing I saw you really highlighting here was really an acknowledgement of all the privileges you had, and the comfort and the cushioning, and tell us how, how was that acknowledgement of all that you had in terms of, and I'll just summarize it as privileges. How did that play a role in your choice?
I think it made me a bit delusional. I see. So I mean, there is. I think there is something around, what salary, when we were, talking about some of these things that you wanted to touch upon around what place a salary held in my life. And to be honest, the salary was invisible, because between my husband and I, there was nothing that we lacked, or maybe because we are. We didn't have very grand ambitions of purchasing, big things. We never felt that we were, falling short, or that we had to save, or that, come, a certain date in the month when, the salary for this month will arrive, is when, we will be able to do those purchases. At least I didn't feel that. And I think somewhere that's also because I am not very financially savvy. Maybe my husband has a different story. He's a fund manager. But for me, the salary was invisible, which is definitely a clear sign of privilege. And
And I love that, Shreya, because it's so unique, and it's also so beautiful. When you say my salary was invisible, I mean, I've been there at one point in my life. It's not that way anymore, so I know exactly what you mean. But it's almost like the air around us is invisible, but it's supporting us so much, right?
Yeah.
But it's coming in. When every time you need to take a breath, the air just comes in, right?
So you don't realize the importance of things that
Yeah.
you have, right? And of course, the salary went away, and that's when you realize that, okay, it was something.
Yeah. Lovely. So Shreya, when you came up with the germ of the idea, and tell us how it came about as well. And once the idea it's there now in your head, but you have to take the plunge, you have to make the change, you have to actually let go. What were your main concerns, worries, if any, anxieties, fears?
Yeah.
Warnings, if others gave you any?
Yeah, there was a lot of that. I think for all, okay, I'll come to it. So yeah, basically, there was this other thing that was playing. Like I said, there were two things. One was the whole excitement and fascination with the entrepreneurial space and wanting to do something impactful. The other one was that, I think there was a growing realization that women have it tough in professional spaces. There are challenges. I wasn't myself a parent at that point, but I saw the stories of the women around me who were, and even in big companies, there are challenges, there are mindsets that need to be pushed against. And of course, there's clear, tangible, sort of, what do you say, damage, or a knock that a woman's career takes if, in many cases, if she doesn't have a support system and she has to take a step back, or take a step away, rather, I would say, from her career for caregiving purposes. And in our gendered society, very often it's the women. So I say the women. So there was a growing realization of that. My friend Deepa, who at that time was my friend and now is one of my co-founders, she had this personal story where she took a break for a couple of years, and when she wanted to return, she found it very tough. And Deepa has been an absolute sort of achiever, all her life. She's a CA, and then she got into IIM Bangalore. She's been a management consultant. She's worked in great places, and her not being able to find something which was commensurate to her experience and her skills when she wanted to return seemed, seemed very off. It didn't make sense, and I think there was this, what do you say, growing empathy with this problem, and we wanted to do something about it. And interestingly, my two friends, Deepa and Rashmi, who's the third founder, at the same time, felt strongly enough about doing something about it as well. And that happens rarely, right? When, to people you know well and the people you like want to do some, huge life changing, and undertake a huge life changing initiative. It's almost a miracle. And that's how we got onto Flexibees. which helps women return to work, qualified women return to work via flexible career opportunities. So that's how that happened.
Shreya, I see three very beautiful things coming together, in terms of something that pulled you here. One is your affection and caring for your friends and connection with their story, right? Second, the broader cause itself that you were, looking for and that you felt strongly about. And the third is, really actually two of your friends, this embarking on a journey together rather than alone. So just, three tugs at your heart that pulled you into this. But what were the fears in your brain or fears in your heart, both emotional and cognitive?
Yeah, so I was scared of failing. I haven't, I've been also in spaces where I've managed academically to do well. There is a certain way in which people see me in my family and friends ecosystem, and failing, doing this very new and very strange thing was definitely
very new and very strange. I like that. Yes.
It was still at that time, I think, strange. So today, yeah, entrepreneurship has become democratized to the extent that my, close relatives understand valuation and, who's getting funded and who's not. And, now they understand all that. But even when we started up at that time, it was still,
it still is strange outside of certain circles.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so there was the fear of failure, for sure. There were some tangible fears. So like I said, the salary was invisible, so there were no, very close term or short term pressures. But because my husband is a fund manager, I've somewhat become trained to think a little long term, and I would think about, what if we ended up not being able to save enough. I mean, maybe a lot of people don't think that way. I am told, but I wouldn't also if it wasn't for my husband. But I did end up having these thoughts that what if we don't end up saving enough for retirement? What if we don't end up saving enough? We were planning to, have a baby soon, and of course, I knew that it would take a lot from me to be able to start, and grow a business and have a baby at the same time. So there were these, sort of emotional anxieties, as well as, some tangible time management and financial, long-term financial concerns as well. Yeah, I guess these would be the main ones.
And what helped you overcome these anxieties or these thoughts when they would come? Like, how did you talk yourself into it?
So, I think I think I was so excited. Okay, I was so excited. The pull of it, was so huge that it was very easy for me to talk myself into it. Yeah. So I took that leap very much on the basis of hope and hopes and dreams, and not on, cold hard fact so much. And I think that may be the case for a lot of people who take, such drastic calls, because it is logic defined to some extent. You are leaving something that's well paid to get into a space where, 1% of companies succeed. So it is, it doesn't make sense, and of course you take, you take calculated, you do calculations to mitigate that. You understand that the space is big, that there is opportunity, that you're doing something that will fulfill you in other ways. All of those are ways. But yeah, I think I was very excited, and that itself helped me talk myself into it. One of the things that I would listen to at that time was the speech that Steve Jobs gave at at Stanford, at his Stanford
Stay hungry, stay foolish.
Yeah, that one, that iconic speech. And that I used to listen to on loop, and it had actually very good
on loop. So he makes three main points there, right? So which one did you resonate with the most? On loop is like the first time, but this is amazing, Shreya. Yeah.
I think the one that I resonate with the most is the one about death. Is that death is the biggest change agent. It's an eventuality, and when you finally, nobody comes with anything. We are all naked. You are not going to take any of it into death and beyond. You're not going to take your money, your designations. All of these are constructs that you have, convinced yourself of, that are important. And at the end of the day, none of it matters. That really helped me. Yeah.
Such a gateway to freedom.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, beautiful.
Very, very liberating.
I can see that even as you say it now, right? And somebody might listen to you on loop now.
Yeah, so see, I was delusional. I was listening to Steve Jobs and imagining myself, to be following in his footsteps. But yeah, I think,
we are all delusional. At least that's the way I look at it. Like all our conditioning, even the fears, even the reasons to do something is as delusional as the reasons to step out. So, but Shreya, something interesting about your journey is about how you went into entrepreneurship and growing this baby with your two best friends or close friends. And you also very soon after that, or was it before, after, or shortly after, you got into parenting, becoming a parent. And I've heard you talk about both of these in similar terms. So I would love to hear from you, what are the similarities, differences, parallels between raising a business and a baby, and how did they come together in your life?
Yeah, I mean, this is such an interesting question. So yeah, we had a baby, I think a year or so after we started up. And I think both are very tough. That's, very obvious similarity. But I think I would say it's tougher to raise a baby for me than a actual human baby than it is to grow a startup, simply because or other two things. Firstly, because I've trained for the latter all my life. I've trained for it by
Wow.
I've built skills.
And nobody trains us to be a parent, right?
Nobody trains you to be a parent. The skills that you need to be a parent, I mean, they are all discovered on the job, and often too late. Yeah, so I think
totally resonate with that completely.
Yeah, so I that was a whole new thing, and the reserves of patience, being able to get through some of the darkest times, and the stakes that are involved are all far higher when you're dealing with a human kid. So I think that's harder. That was harder. It's easier for me to think about business and think about this is where we want to go, and this is how we must do it, and this is the way we must break down that path into achievable goals. All of those things are what we've been doing all our lives, or our recent lives. The other thing was that you get you start getting or seeing some early success or feedback when you're when you're at work, whereas that doesn't happen when you're raising a baby, or especially when
we keep living in the hope that it will
and that it'll turn out fine, or that he or she is okay. So that part can be frustrating as well. So anyway, these are or somewhat on the lighter vein, in a lighter vein, but both are tough, both are rewarding,
both make you grow,
and both
unpredictable ways.
In unpredictable ways, and both need, I think, a huge amount of support, and having somebody co-leading it with you. It's extremely difficult doing either just by yourself. Of course, there are people who are doing it, and that's just they are it seems like they're from another planet, because it's just so hard. It would be so hard to be a single parent, for example.
Shreya, let's. I want to ask you more about that, definitely, because you are one of the few people I know who's actually doing it. All in a and I know it's a cliche phrase, but growing a business, keeping it thriving, raising your baby, and really acknowledging the fact that you're not doing it alone, but you have co-founders in your business, and you have others who support you with the baby. And tell us about, how this contributes and how it makes it possible for you to do this, because sometimes a lot of people don't reach out because for whatever reasons. And I just want to have this conversation here in terms of, hey, when you see people doing it, it's also because it's not just a solo journey, and it doesn't have to be, and maybe it is for some people, but it doesn't always have to be.
Yeah. So, okay, first of all, in this thing, I would like to say that for women, especially, you hear a lot about women being solo founders, and I think that is also to do with the fact that it's difficult to find like-minded folks. If you are you are constrained in some ways. For example, if you are moving cities to be where your husband is. Some of those things makes it harder, I feel, and I'm talking about all women. Some women, of course, may be more privileged and may have a slightly different equation at home, but I think for men, and it's easier to sort of, they have more agency to be around or they can even a lot of times men co-locate, they relocate to be in the same cities where, say, the people they want to go into business with are. And that's difficult for women to do, for reasons that we all know. And I think that's one of the reasons, contributing factors towards why so many women end up being solo co-founders. That definitely it is it becomes much more difficult. One of the things actually that worked well for us is that we were absolutely fine with being remote co-founders. The three of us were even now and from day one have been building our business entirely remotely. So
and this was before COVID, right? Now the whole world is.
Yeah, now the whole world is. At that time, we used to really, it used to be frowned upon when you would tell, or when I would tell people that my co-founders are in Singapore, and people wouldn't understand how that can work. But I feel like, yes, there is definitely, things are changing, and today women have more agency, which is great. But also, I think a lot of these things have become enabled by technology, which means that you are perhaps able to find like-minded people who you want to get into, one of the closest relationships that you will ever have in your life across geographies. So that I think that worked for us. And yes, I think it's, for me, I cannot imagine really doing either on my own. I mean, even a startup, there are so many, you're making huge decisions every day, and it's so comforting to have people who you can think through, brainstorm, who you can share responsibility and accountability with. And of course, the sheer quantum of work, I mean, in any startup, you are always resource crunched. For example, founders talk about having to work 80-hour weeks. We've never worked 80-hour weeks. We've had days when we would, of course, be up till late, or, be working for 10, 12 hours, weeks where we would be working for maybe, too long, really. But, on average, we don't work that much. We perhaps, have 8 to 10 hour days. And I mean, again, difficult to put it into hours. Each of us has a different way of working, but it's that we are able to maintain our sanity, even while growing a business. We are able to still, devote ourselves, parts of ourselves, to other things. Like for me, that's my child, or even hobbies that I like to, be part of. And I think a lot of times when you're a single founder, you may not have the luxury of that.
Carrying everything on your shoulders.
Carrying everything, and you have to understand. For example, we divide responsibilities also. So I for example, don't get into accounting, the whole relationship with the CA, or we have clearly defined areas, so we don't need to carry the mental burden, or the do the actual work, or even carry the ownership of certain things that does not rest with us. So it's a huge blessing. That's with the co-founding ecosystem, of course. And if you're asking about reaching out for support, Yeah, I think that's with respect to at least a know-how of how some of these things can be done, finding the right resources, it can all help if you are a solo founder. Those are the ways in which you can reduce your burden, of course.
Yeah. So Shreya, if you look back over your last 5 years, tell me about a time, possibly one time when things were really challenging for you. And how was it? And how did you overcome it? And how did you get through it?
So, I mean, the thing that comes to mind is the pandemic, and I think this is going to be overarching theme of this talk is the privilege, because I have to say over here, and I feel it very acutely every time I talk about the challenges I felt I had during the pandemic, that we were all healthy. At the end of the day, we were all healthy. We didn't lose close family members. So in that we had livelihood, we had food to eat. In that sense, we were much better off than many people who were affected. But having said that, it was definitely very tough because we didn't have any help at that time. We both had demanding jobs, and we had a kid who was 2 years old at that time. So it was a very difficult time. We would I think we we lost some health during the process. We didn't it is not maybe so visible, but it left us the worse off. And But then it had to be done. We had to get through it. Both our jobs were in a phase of high, in a phase where it was demanding at that point in time, which was very exciting on the job front. And I personally did not want to take a break or take a step back from that at all. So yeah, I think that that phase was tough, but we got through it together, my husband and I.
What were the things that helped you get through it? Like, what do you think were your main lifelines, either emotional or in terms of mindset or people?
I think first of all, the fact that my husband and I, we both of us worked together on it. We divided our responsibilities the best that we could. That was definitely one. The second thing was the fact that I have a lot of flexibility at work. So even though there is a lot of work, I can set my own hours because we run our own business. So that of course helped. I mean, if I had to answer to say a boss or somebody, and I would be at the mercy of that person's understanding and empathy towards me, that would make it definitely more difficult. My co-founders, of course, were completely on board and extended every support to me. In fact, for that 1 year, our the times that we would get, we would talk during the day were all aligned as per my schedule. The other thing that worked was, I mean, simply planning. I'm okay at it. I don't like to overplan, but that phase was one where I couldn't do without really planning my day extremely well, because I had fewer, I had fewer slots in the day. So I would plan, to the extent that I knew that these are the things that I would accomplish in my morning slot. This is what I would do in my, day and afternoon, evening, things like that. And that thing I religiously followed for a year. And the last thing would be that, I, no matter what happens, I always take time out for myself to do something that relaxes me. That's very important to me. I mean, I sort of tangibly feel unhappy if I'm not able to do, spend some time with myself, just doing my own thing. At the cost of, I mean, at this ripe age in my life, I've learned that whatever that makes you happy comes with its own price tag. So it's at the cost of sleep for me, or health. But I still do it, and that helps me survive and feel happy.
Wow. I really like, just going to sort of repeat both these last 2 points you said, because they're great points. I mean, the first about literally planning your day and prioritizing. And so since you run your business working out of home, right, and you have a kid, um, so your journey and your learnings actually are relevant now to even people who are in a salaried job but working out of home and kid, right? So pretty much the same parameters. And, the second thing that you really talk about, which is taking time out to do something you like. And I love that because I do that as well. And it's interesting because even if it comes at the cost of physical health or sleep, it's like it's your spiritual health, right? Your
Yeah,
spirit. The spirit
yeah,
of you is rejuvenated when you do something you like
yeah,
and you feel like, okay, you come alive.
yeah.
And I actually believe that that helps anyway. It would contribute towards your physical healing and make up to maybe not completely, maybe more than completely sometimes in ways for, the price that we might be paying. So I really get that. And I'm glad you brought it out here because I just think it's so important for us. If you're not doing something that we like, then it's
Yeah.
almost like, okay, then why did I live today, right? Why? So lovely there. Shreya, before we close, I could keep this conversation going, but in the interest of time, and before we close it, I'm going to ask you to put on the hat of an advisor, or if you don't like the word advisor, just suggestions of consider a hypothetical person who's working in a full-time job, like in a big corporate organization, and this person is toying with the idea of, hey, you know what? Could I step out and do something else on my own?
Yeah.
What would be your top 3 pieces of advice or suggestions that this person should think about or look at?
Yeah, so I mean, of course, as in the role of an advisor or a mentor, I can be very logical, and I can honestly say that I didn't think about these things. But yeah, but
You
if
have the wisdom now, so go ahead.
yeah, yeah, but if one is inclined to think about it, then I would say, I mean, definitely think about your financial security. It's not always important. Of course, the lack of financial security is also another kind of driver. Sometimes, and that can also work in that way. But it's important to know where you stand, and then hence how much of runway you have to do the things you want to do. So I think that would be an important one. The second thing is, again, for somebody who's deliberately, in a very deliberate fashion, making this decision, would be to understand, while the big picture is exciting, what are the nuts and bolts of, the work that you would be doing, or the initiative that you would be part of post your, leaving and transitioning. Because a lot of times, especially in the case of moving into entrepreneurship from, a 9 to 5 job, the actual, work doesn't change. It's towards a different cause, and maybe the work environment is different.
Yeah.
But if you are kind of, working in, using the same skills. So if you're, doing sales and marketing at your work, and you're doing sales and marketing here, you'd be doing, similar things. You'd be making PPTs. You would be conversing with people, trying to sell, leading a team, a lot of those things. So, what are the nuts and bolts, and are you okay with those things? Do they excite you, or are they tolerable at least? And some new things may come in, things as small as having to manage admin, which you wouldn't have to do at your job. So, are some of those things again tolerable? And here there is another philosophy that I really, sort of resonates strongly. It's by Mark Manson, and he talks about it in his book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And he says that, life, has pain no matter where you go and what you do. There are, pain is never not a part of your life. Anything that you take up, whether it is, something of deep passion for you, there will be some pain attached to that. Basically, what you need to ask yourself is, what pain are you willing to tolerate for the sake of the goal that you are hoping to achieve? Um,
That's so wonderful, Shreya. And I think it's very powerful advice. And linking it back to the broader point you made about really trying to get information and data on what's the nuts and bolts of what you're doing every day, and remembering that while your heart is connected to the bigger picture and the excitement, there are these things you have to do. And the analogy I would draw here is about, you have a baby and you're really excited about it, but you do have to change the diapers. I mean, I've yet to come across someone who says, changing diapers really excites me. And I get up in the morning to change
yeah,
diapers, but it's part of what you do for the stuff that truly excites you, and recognizing that there's going to be a certain ratio proportion of that, and what is the ratio proportion that would be tolerable for you. And I'm with you, there would be truly painful moments also, and what could they be and how much is tolerable. So powerful. And your third piece of advice, just
So the third thing that I would say is to ask yourself whether you're willing to fail. And that, in fact, that is something that I did actually practice. That is one thing that I did think about when I was transitioning. It really also liberated me, because I thought, what is the worst that could happen? And I made myself sort of, I put myself in a scenario where I had failed, after having taken this big leap and so grandly announcing to the world that I'm going to do something, impactful and interesting, and then, not being able to do it for whatever reasons. And then what is the worst that could happen? I mean, yes, there would be a temporary, it would be definitely sad. You would have lost maybe a few years of your life, but so what? Life is long. And I realized that the people I admire most are the people who, had a more circuitous approach to where they've reached than, or rather admire or find interesting. I mean, I find their life stories very interesting. So yes, if I become one of those interesting people who'd have, tried something big and failed. So I made myself consciously think of that, and I put it into my conversations at that time that, I could fail, so that I become more comfortable with the idea of failing. It is some sort of a safety net at the end of the day, but I think it's important to understand what your appetite for it is, if you're making such a big.
I love that, right? So you're creating this psychological safety net around the whole idea and possibility that you could fail. And of course, failure is subjective, but you can paint out what is the kind of failure that would hit you as a failure, and then creating the psychological safety net and saying that, that would still make me interesting. And I'm going to guess that's something that you would probably still be doing even today, right? 5 years, because technically we could fail anytime, and recreating that at every stage, or at least every major decision stage. Wonderful. Thank you, Shreya. And it's been a pleasure talking with you, and wish you all the very best. So lovely to see. One of the things that I really connect with is the vision of what you've created as Flexibees, driven by, what touched you right at the beginning, which is that, hey, women often need to take breaks, and then what happens post that break, and how they get reintegrated into the workplace. So we will be putting more information about you and about Flexibees in the description for anyone else who connects with that purpose and wants to see the amazing work that you're doing in that space. And wish you all the very best.
Thank you so much. It was lovely chatting with you. Thanks for having me.
Sure. Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you are someone who's looking to craft your life and work in a way that is more in line with your inner rhythm, then do visit my website, www.craftingourlives.com. You'll find it in the description, because I have a host of resources put together for you, and this is based on 20 years of my own research and work with people as a coach in this area. I also have a free newsletter, so your starting points should be to sign up for my newsletter, subscribe to this channel to stay updated for further videos, and to go on to the edX site and look for my free MOOC course there, titled Crafting Realities, Work, Happiness and Meaning, and then reach out to me if you need further assistance. I also offer private coaching, as well as I run group coaching sessions, and I also conduct residential retreats, and you can find all that information on my website or in the newsletter as and when we announce it.